Imagine with me that you and I walked into a coffee shop. We get into the coffee shop and there's 30 people in the room. We look around and some people are on their phones. Most people are on their phones. Some people have their head down. Some people just look tired and anguished. Then suddenly we find out that every single one of those 30 people are contemplating suicide at that very moment. What do you do in that moment? The answer is you do something, right? You do something. Whether you go up to one individual, you stand up, make an announcement to everyone, or you run into the streets and you say, there's a room full of people about to kill themselves. Come help. Now, what if I told you tens of thousands of people every month in North America are searching the phrase, how to kill yourself online? And what if I told you 2 years ago the top search result was 7 easy, painless ways to kill yourself? What would you do? I had the honor of seeing 2 years ago 4 people, 2 web developers, a communications manager, and a psychotherapist give up their entire weekend at a hackathon. They bought the domain howtokillyourself.org. But when you go on their website, rather than 7 easy, painless ways to kill yourself, you go on the website and there's 3 words at the top. You're not alone. There's a video to watch, a phone number to call, information. That's unbelievable. The crazy part of this story is a year after this website was built, one of the developers on the team, she came to me and said, we got to talk. And I'm thinking, what's going on? She says, last night, so this is her telling the story. She says, last night I was out for coffee with my friend. I started describing this website I was building, the fonts, the colors, the layout, and the friend just grabbed her arm. And she looked her in the eye and she said, what is the domain of that website? And she said, howtokillyourself.org. And the friend started to weep. The night before, she went online to figure out how to kill herself. And she said, I landed on that website, and that website saved my life. And then within 24 hours, she's out for coffee with the creator of that website. That very story completely shifted my worldview on how we can use technology. Everything changed for me when I heard that. Over the last 3 years, I've been on this journey, this quest to figure out how do we use, leverage, think about technology with Jesus in mind. It all started for me about 3 years ago. I was in Toronto, so I'm actually from a small-ish town of Waterloo, Ontario, the home of BlackBerry. Okay. I'll never say that word again in here. No. From Waterloo, so I was at a conference in Toronto, and there's this big dynamic speaker on stage using his hands like me, way too much. And he says this phrase, and it rhymed. I was like, come on, did it have to rhyme? But it rhymed, and it changed everything. He said this, in the midst of devastation, there's an opportunity for innovation. For him, in the context of this one line, was this good news about Jesus Christ, which was in the midst of devastation, the most horrific act of taking an innocent man who only served the people and put him on a cross to die, came this opportunity for new life and new things. For me, what happened is this very line, 2 of my worlds collided. So in the midst of devastation, my wife and I, 6 years ago, we joined 20 people and we started a church in our city. But the way we started this church was we all moved into 3 neighborhoods. My wife and I had just spent 3 months in South Sudan. Actually, the summer we were in South Sudan was the summer it became a country. So we flew into Sudan and we flew out of South Sudan in the same airport. It's crazy. But what we learned in those 3 months was we saw with our eyes this poverty we had never seen before, which stirred us in one dimension. But what happened was after 2 weeks, when they realized we didn't leave, because they were so used to missionary trips coming in that they put on a face, that this deep-seated anger and brokenness came out. My friends in South Sudan grew up in refugee camps. They grew up in war. And when we got back home, what we realized was with those on the margins of society are also dealing with this deep anguish, this deep suffering because of how society treats them, because of what they're going through. So when we got back, we went around asking cab drivers where they don't like to go in our city. I don't really know what we were doing at the time. And what we happened to find out was there's this neighborhood everyone was trying to get out of. And we said, okay, Lord, that's where we're going. 6 years ago, we moved into this neighborhood, which we're in to this day. And over the last 6 years, my wife and I have journeyed with people trying to get out of prostitution when you have a 6-year-old son that depends on your income, to calls in the middle of the night where our friends are killing themselves or wanting to kill themselves and have no other person to call, or having our friend shot and killed a year and a half ago by a police officer in our neighborhood. And so when I heard this in the midst of devastation, I'm just thinking, yeah, all of my friends are just, and in their lives were experiencing this devastation. And then the other half, I was just confused, right? I was like, opportunity for innovation doesn't make any sense. The answer is you just grind it out. How can there possibly be new things with all of this? And what happened was I discovered in Waterloo, this city I'm in, is the second highest startup density in the world. Next to, yeah, here, I guess, which is here. I'm looking around going, hold on, why is that? That's crazy. Where are all these creative, brilliant people coming from? Why are they all starting companies? There's got to be all these innovative people. Oh, wait, opportunity for innovation. I got to talk to them. So I started meeting people. This is, again, right around 3 years ago. I started meeting people in tech, and one person in tech, and I would say, I've got this phrase. I don't know what to do with it. Tell me what to do. And they would say, oh, you go talk to this person and this person and this person. And I met all these tech people, but a new problem rose. And the problem was this. I heard the phrase, I don't know my place in the church, over and over and over again from all my tech friends. I'm thinking, what does that mean? I don't know my place in the church. One guy, I'm out for coffee with him, and he goes, I don't know my place in the church. I'm going, what does that mean? He goes, well, he's a tech guy. He goes, I don't want to do public speaking. The phrase he used was, he's like, I'd rather be in the casket than give the eulogy. I'm like, oh my gosh, so he'd rather be dead than doing what I'm doing right now. I'm like, that's a big fear. That's significant. And then he goes, and I don't play acoustic guitar. So he's like, what do I do in the church? Right? I'm like, well, you're in tech. Like, what are you doing? He's like, PowerPoint and the website. And that's it, right? And like those were his jobs. And I'm like, well, what do you do? He's like, oh, I invented BlackBerry Messenger, one of the first text messaging platforms. Oh, okay. What are you doing? We have PowerPoint. I'm like, okay. We need PowerPoint. We need it. Important. I'm like, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life. Can we do something else? And I said to this guy, I said, could you build, some sort of platform? I don't even know what that word is at the time. Can you build some sort of platform, that unites all the missionaries around the world to share their resources? I heard that's a big problem. I kid you not, this man, we're out for coffee, one-on-one. He looks up in the sky for 1.5 minutes. That's a long time for coffee. So I'm looking up, and I'm like, what is this guy looking at? Like, is there a bird stuck in the rafters? Or like, is there something going on? He was building the platform, like in the sky. I was like, the algorithms are like shooting around and all the calculations. And I'm like, I see nothing. I don't know what's going on. Because 1.5 minutes goes by, and I'm like, do I interrupt him? What do I say? He's building it now. I can't say anything. And then he looks down at me, he looks me in the eye, and he goes, yeah, I could build that. And I said, well, why don't you? You know what he said to me? No one's ever told me that's a way I could use my gifts or abilities for the kingdom of God. I always just thought PowerPoint and website or chairs. And look, over and over, I met all these tech people. I'm like, that's a devastating phrase. for a pastor who one of my foundational mandates is to say, how are my people gifted and called? And how do I point them to Jesus to use those gifts for the kingdom of God? And you've got this emerging group with brilliant wizardry thinking that don't know how to use that gift. And then during that same season, I met all these pastors and ministry leaders. And another suffering rose up, which was, I had one pastor said, one of the major issues I have that people come to me with is screen addiction and digital addiction. And then they would say, man, I don't even know what to do with all of this. How do we use technology? Should I use Facebook? Should I use it? What do I do? And then one pastor even said, suicide rates up in our neighborhood, and we don't know what to do with that. And I just remember stepping back, and I met about 40, 50 people, and I was like, oh, they should talk to each other. And like, there comes a time when it's just like, talk to each other. It's like conflict resolution 101. Get in a room, you know? And so I emailed them all. And I said, I'm going to be at this coffee shop on a Tuesday night. Who wants to come? And I booked out like this little corner room. And I was like, if 8 people come, this is record numbers, you know, because we've never done it. And so like we booked off this corner room and 35 people show up. And I'm looking around going, what is going on? And when they came in, we gave them name tags and we color-coded them. So if you're in tech, you got blue. If you're in ministry, you got red. If you're in business, it was like other, you know, mixed color. And then we strategically put them around tables together and forced them to talk. And it was one of the most unbelievable nights of my life. 35 people at a coffee shop. Because here's what happened. Suddenly all the ministry folks and the people in the neighborhood suffering, seeing the suffering, would just put them on the table and they'd go, I don't know what to do about this. And the tech people would go, have you thought about this? Could we build this? Have you thought about the problem this way? And I was like, we're going to start like 10 companies tonight. This is unbelievable. And I stepped away from that thinking, there is something bigger than myself going on here. A couple months later, we did another one of those small gatherings. Then I heard about TED Talks, and I was like, those are cool. So we did this TED Talk event. Again, this is in Waterloo. It's not a huge city. And 163 people show up 6 months after the 35 people. It's like a mega church in Canada. It's like insane, right? And I'm like, what is going on? And then we did a hackathon, right? And we did this hackathon. That's where that suicide story came out. And then all these other stories started to come out. And then I heard in Toronto, friends in Toronto, Vancouver reach out going, hey, can you connect us with the network there? And I'm like, of course there's something going on in those cities. They're way bigger than ours. And then no one was doing anything. And so we started gatherings, just small groups of people saying, you know what? Let's connect this world with this world, the tech world with the ministry world, with the charity world, with those that are seeing the suffering in the neighborhoods and in the cities. And let's get them in a room together and let them hash it out. Figure it out. Start working together. Start building together. Start creating together. And now we've had this opportunity in Chicago now to start. And Mark and I are working together here, and we're just thinking there's more and more cities. And now what we've discovered is this thing called faith tech is like this microcosm little thing in this broader movement where the church is just starting to wake up. It's happening. Like there's a turn happening right now where the church is just starting to wake up going a couple things. They're saying, it's unbelievable how technology is changing us. It's changing our brains, it's changing our habits, it's changing the way we interact with Jesus. So we've got to figure this out. And they're going, how do we leverage this to share the good news of Jesus around the world? You see, because the reality is today, we are awfully, awfully broken. We did an event recently in Toronto where there was this panel. And one of the guys was a really well-known tech leader in Canada. And he stands up and he goes, I'm 38 years old. And 3 years ago, I had everything the world could offer. The house, the car, the boat, everything. Everything that the good life said we could have. And he goes, and I hated myself. And I hated the world. And he goes, so I go on a quest to find myself. And he tried all different religions. He tried self-help. And he stands before 120 people and he goes, and I didn't find myself. I found Jesus. And he said, for the first time in my life, I found out what love really was and a true sense of fulfillment. And you're like, you could hear a pin drop in this room. It's unbelievable. So right after the event, this young guy, about 25 years old, beelines it for John, the speaker. And I'm talking to someone else, and I'm like looking out of the corner of my eye, right? Something's going down over there. And they start this really intense conversation. And about 15 minutes in, this unbelievable thing happened. I'm looking over, and this young man, 25, suddenly takes his backpack and rips it off, takes his jacket and rips it off, and stands there like this. I'm like, what just happened? Like, what is going on over there? And so 2 mornings later, I'm out for breakfast with John, the speaker. Obviously, I said, John, what the heck happened? And he said, that young guy beelines it for me. He looks me in the eye and goes, I'm 25, and I'm just like you. I have everything the world could offer. Everything that tech told me would save me, from technology to money to success of my company to all the perks. And he goes, I hate myself and I hate the world. 15 minutes into that conversation, that young man gave his life to Jesus, and the throwing off of his jacket, what was in his backpack? Laptop. And he said, I threw off my laptop because that was my God. That was my Savior. I relied on it. I put everything into it, my time, my energy, my soul, my tears. And he released it, and he threw out his hands because he's like, I've never felt so free. This is unbelievable. I've been stepping back and thinking about this. Imagine what it would look like in this world if we actually said, why don't we bring those 2 worlds together and start movements all across the country? We have people in Germany, Bangkok, Thailand, and Japan, all these places all around the world reaching out and saying, how do we start a movement? And we say, start somewhere. Right? Imagine what it would look like in our neighborhoods if we actually cared about those who are really suffering. Said, not only are we going to intentionally get in their lives, but we can think about the creative abilities we have, work together in our cities, and do something that's going to serve and equip them and help them. I've been thinking about all this, and I'm like, what do we do? What do we do with all this? What do you guys think the answer is? We do something. So that's my challenge to you. You heard all these stories I just told. You've got to do something now. Thank you.